Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro adventure. The end of another week, and the end of another poll. We've got a very strong win for Harlequins back for Shadowrun. A very wise choice for you all because it's an absolutely fabulous adventure. Now as usual, I'll cover that in the desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other poll related stuff and some other channel related stuff. But I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week have maxed out their charisma attribute. And their absolutely stunning good looks and warm personalities brings an absolutely rosy glow to my heart, especially knowing that they're doing this and supporting me. It's very much appreciated. Now if you'd like to join them and be able to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to become a real honest-to-goodness fake laird of Scotland, or you'd like to join our reading group where I share some of the retro magazine articles and a bunch of stuff that I've written myself now that I sell through DrivethruRPG but is available to patrons of laird or librarian status, then there's a Patreon in the link down below. If you could check that out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Harlequins Back. So, this is Harlequins Back. Came out from FASA for Shadowrun in 1994. And is the sequel to Harlequin, which was a campaign. But where Harlequin was a campaign of individual adventures linked together by one plot leading through them all, this is one adventure which is broken down into subsections. Now this is an absolutely massive adventure, would take a long time to run through, because each subsection is like an adventure in its own. So you could take breaks while running it, but it is all one story, far more so cohesive than the original Harlequin. Now this contains a lot about the meta plot. This is all about how magic is returning to the world. So if you've read through Earthdawn and Shadowrun, magic comes in surges. It comes in waves. So we are living, or we were living when Shadowrun came out, in the fifth world, which is when there's no magic. And then magic returned in 2012 and activated the genes, causing elves, dwarves, orcs and trolls to express, allowing dragons to drag themselves out of the ground, and magic to happen. But the world before the non-magical one, the fifth world, so going back to the fourth world, was the world of Earthdawn. And that's when the magic is starting to wane. Because when magic is at its absolute peak, magical creatures, virtually elementals, can walk the earth. And the worst of these were the ones called horrors, which basically walked the world around them, destroying everything. So the intelligent, what in Earthdawn is called name-giving races, had to retreat underground. They created magical fortresses and they head out. And when Earthdawn is being played, it's as the magic's waning, so the horrors are basically gone, and the name-giving races are emerging to reclaim the surface. Whereas Shadowrun's at the other end of that. But these cycles of time take a long. So before the horrors come, it's supposed to be thousands of years. But the backstory to this is that the Great Ghost Dance, which the Native Americans used to reclaim their territory and destroy all the nuclear weapons in the world and all stuff like that, to restore nature to the United States, created a spike. And that is bridging the gap. This area of higher magic is bridging the gap that horrors are starting to exploit. They're starting to build a bridge. But I've waffled on a lot already, so let's have a look at the back cover. So Harlequin's back, and the world may never be the same. It's been long said that trouble follows Harlequin around like a loyal dog, but this time he's taking the lead and dragging some Shadowrunners along on his waking nightmare. It's clear that the level of magic is rising in the sixth world, and the bigger magic makes the world a more dangerous place. But the particular danger Harlequin's worried about isn't supposed to be a problem for another 2,000 years. Harlequin's Back is a big adventure for Shadowrun 2nd edition. It involves magic and mayhem on a scale beyond any previously published Shadowrun adventure, and is recommended for veteran gamemasters and fearless players. Experience with the first Harlequin adventure is helpful but not required. And this would fit in anywhere in Shadowrun, because it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. All it matters is that magic is returning, and it's coming back thousands of years ahead. Now, one of the things I absolutely love about this adventure is the wonderful names that wrote it. So if I flick it open, we can see the publishing quality is standard. The binding in my copy is not great. Some pages are starting to come apart and some are glued together too well. But we can see different sections of it. So we've got Aftermath, written by Nigel D. Findlay. Now, I've talked about Nigel D. Findlay before. He is one of the best Shadowrun authors and was sadly taken from us at way too young an age. Not long after this was written. Nigel Findlay did some astounding work for Shadowrun and really got the universe fantastically. We've got Paul R. Hume, absolutely great as well. Tom Dowd is the story concept came from. Then we've got Carl Sargent, one of the guys behind a lot of British stuff, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and all that. Carl Sargent, amazing writer. Mike Nistel, Steve Kenson, and Tom Dowd did some additional writing. All of these are absolutely fantastic writers at the very top of their game. And you can see the story development's got all of those, plus many, many more writers tying all this together. This was really well thought out. We go into it, and we've got Voices from the Past. Basically, after the events of Harlequin, the character Harlequin himself, the guy on the cover, an immortal elf who has existed around since the time of Earthdawn, so he's many thousands of years old. He's just been hiding out in the modern world. He's kind of been depressed by how much he misread the situation in Harlequin. And he's become a bit of an alcoholic, but he starts to have dreams and he realizes what's going on. The introduction brings us into it, talks about the usual things, how to use this book, the adventure background, detailing it. This calamity should not occur for another 2,500 years, yet Harlequin's vision and the results of subsequent research showed the creatures would arrive early, within the next decade, because of a single event in the recent US history. A man named Daniel Howlin' Coyote, to force the return of traditional Amerindian lands to their rightful owners, Howlin' Coyote and others employed a powerful magic ritual known as the Great Ghost Dance. Well, this has created a spike in the level of the world's magic. The expenditure of life energy and the powerful emotions raised the level of magic in the area significantly higher than everywhere else in the world. And it talks about how this was basically blood magic. So evil magic was involved in the Great Ghost Dance, even though it was done for good reasons. Carry on through, and it's got the plot synopsis. Well, basically, the plot synopsis is Harlequin takes the Shadowrunners to the site of the Great Ghost Dance and leads them into a vision quest of types. Basically, they go into the metaplanes of magic in a kind of dream. Because they are ordinary Shadowrunners and they're not equipped to deal with the metaplanes in their true form, they visualize them as different things. So a lot of what goes on in this adventure is the players seeing things in a certain form, but that's not what's really going on. So, for example, they keep revisiting the bridge. And the bridge they see as this rocky promenade leading out over a chasm. And on the far side, there's these creatures building a rickety bridge, trying to build their way closer. And this is a visual representation of the magical spike covering the distance to the metaplanes where the horrors have to get across, and the horrors are trying to bridge this to come across the metaplanes. Now, Harlequin has come up with a way. There's a person called Thaler who can use magic or her song or something, the players will visualize it as her voice, to hold back the evil of the horrors and give the world time to develop so it will be able to cope the thousands of years it needs. But Thaler's voice has been taken away. Her song is taken and it's been put in a songbird. And the players will have to go to different metaplanes to gather up the items they need to get the songbird, to get Thaler, and go back and get her to sing to hold back the horrors. And these metaplane quests are the very meat of the adventure. They are very interesting stuff. So we continue through the introduction. We've got foreshadows, so things start happening to the players. They start getting luck. Things will just come up. Target numbers will go down for them. Their karma pool might instantly get refreshed for no reason. They might just get bonus successes. They have respect. People just start respecting them. And then they start getting dreams. And just in ordinary day life, they also hear bits of conversation which seem to be linked. I wish that bird would stop singing. It's driving me nuts. She's like a different woman. She's got drive now, a purpose. I'm not sure. I didn't like the old her better. just foreshadowing of what's going to come. You can drop those into your adventure. It's also got information that you should gather about the players. Things like, what manner of dying do you fear most? What's your favourite colour? The best thing you've ever done. To get some background information on your players and their characters. So we've got Into the Desert, where Harlequin and the players drive out into the desert to the site of the Great Ghost Dance. They can ask him about things. He says that they've not been chosen by him, they've been chosen by Lady Luck. I like the point that it drops in here. Are the bugs the enemy? Because obviously one of the first signs of increasing magic in the Shadowrun world were the insect spirits, who took over Chicago and have had a large effect on the world. Many adventures written about them. The Levei, hardly, just a pesky nuisance, those things. So the insect spirits are just very minor compared to the horrors, absolutely destructive things. And then we've got the bridge. So they start seeing what's going on, and they get given their quest. But Harlequin remains here. They travel on themselves, although various people appear throughout all of the metaplanes. Harlequin usually trying to help them a bit, but they get to see different aspects as he appears in the metaplanes. And there's a character, Dark, who's mentioned in the Threats book as being a powerful magic user who wants the horrors to come about. And Dark appears as the villain in each piece. He links everything together as well. Anyway, we've got the encounters at the bridge. You start to see creatures coming across, very minor ones, disgusting, weird creatures. And then we've got Aftermath. So this is the first one, where the players find themselves in an area which looks like the Seattle area, but many hundreds of years into the future, after some calamity, a nuclear war or whatever, has destroyed the city. You know, they find pieces of building fused into the ground by some massive disaster, perhaps even beyond nuclear weapons. But they encounter an encampment of survivors. And the adventure is about starting to gather things. They need a hood, I believe it is in the first adventure, the enclave, which is the settlement. They need to get the hood to put over the songbird to help carry it back to the bridge. Now, this being the distant future, after technology has fallen, all the characters' cyberware basically fades away, but they still remain with the abilities of it. They have the effects of their cyberware, you know, their enhanced reflexes, etc., but it's non-visible. They are back to looking naturally. We've got characters here and the full adventure, or this section of the adventure. Delegation as there's various activity going on, the price of peace, Leroy's Last Stand, this being the representation of Harlequin. And then they travel on to the next metaplane, which is a sort of cowboy steampunk thing. A fantastic version of the Old West. So instead of riding horses, they're riding dinosaurs. But there are elves, dwarves, orcs, trolls in this. It's a Shadowrun Wild West mashup. And it's glorious. Fistful of Karma. The runners find themselves in a fantastic version of the Old West. Their cyberware magic transformed to fit the very strange laws of this reality. So if we carry on through, we've got the encounter here with Dark. Riding animals. It's a very cowboy thing. I'm flicking on here to get to the picture of one of the Shadowrunners. So their cybernetic arm has been replaced by a very steampunk one. Their eye, which was cybernetic, now has a series of lenses to enhance their vision. They're very much into the steampunk era. There's a town which needs rescuing. There's a property baron buying up all the land to strip mine. It's a wonderful cowboy story. And of course, the Songbird Saloon links it together with the singing voice. I keep flicking through. Day 1, Day 2, Cast of Shadows. Trey is this place's avatar of Mr. Dark. And then we've got By the Sword. So now we're on to sort of Arthurian legend. And the players are sent in to the Time of King Arthur, the Isle of Apples, Cass and Maiden Lane, the Clearing, Lancelot's Hut. And they have to deal with Sir Lancelot, the traitor knight, and the fact that magic is fading from this world because of his betrayal. Vivian, a woman in her middle years, 1.8 meters tall and medium stock. Cass and Maiden Lane. Executioner there, great feast where they have to take part. The Lady of the Lake. So as they complete each of these subsections, they're getting another element. They're getting the cage or the perch for the bird, the hood, as I said, for the first adventure. Then we've got the Impossible Dream. Well, this is the Tower of Babel. You know, people are building a great tower to reach to the heavens. So it's the mythic plane which the players are visiting. There's the architect who's building everything, which once again is Harlequin. There's the great tower and the things which are trying to tear it down. The labyrinth they have to journey through. It's all very abstract. And of course, when they come across the singer, her voice is blocked out, so she has this large metal gag on. The songbird herself, or the songbird. And then they go back to the bridge, and they can see how things progressing there. That the bridge is further built. It's passing across this chasm. It's much closer. And they have to chase down the bird. And then they end up in the masquerade. So this is a Victorian, I would probably phrase it as, masquerade ball the players have to take part in. And the owner of the great mansion they enter is a facet of dark again. Through the maze, the mask. There's betrayal and murder going on that the players have to solve. Finding Thaler, they need to locate her. There's a seance. There's a house arrest where they get accused of the crime. Into the heart of the machine. And then they've got Thaler, they've got the songbird, they've got the cage, so they head back to the bridge. And it's being overrun. The bridge is nearly complete. Dark has arrived there. He's torturing Harlequin. Everything's starting to fall apart. So the players have to save Harlequin, fight off some of the monsters, beat Dark in this metaphorical sense. And Thaler can begin singing. She's got the voice back. They've got all the ingredients they need. So she begins to sing to force them back. However, there's one last twist to it, that Thaler, enough creatures have passed across from the metaplanes that they will confront her. While she can hold them back from crossing the chasm, that any ones which have crossed across can attack her. So the Shadowrunners have to make a decision of whether they face the future of her being eventually overwhelmed and their work undone, or whether they remain behind to protect her, but they will remain there forever. And there's another final twist there, which I won't cover, but it allows the players to complete the adventures as absolute heroes. And then we've got the last few pages, the cast of shadows, Jane Foster, Thaler, and Dark. The 20 questions, which were the questions which you would ask the Shadowrunners earlier. And we've got the story of Thaler's voice. Now, as I said, this is a fantastic adventure. There's so much weirdness in it. You know, ending up in a post-apocalyptic Fallout future as Shadowrunners, ending up fighting side by side with Lancelot, the steampunk stuff. It's great. I'm not into cowboy adventures, but I absolutely loved that section of it as well. It's fantastic stuff. The plot weaves throughout it, and it really feels like it affects the Shadowrun world. In many ways, while not being as tightly plotted as some Shadowrun adventures, this is the most impactful. This is the most important adventure of Shadowrun. I absolutely adored it. I do think it's fantastic, and I highly recommend it. And as I said earlier on, it fits into the timeline anywhere. So that was Harlequin's back, and that won the poll this week with some 31% of the vote, as it was the obvious choice because it's a fantastic adventure. But my heart was absolutely warmed by the fact that Judgment Day for the Judge Dredd role-playing game The only other adventure apart from Slaughter Margin, which I covered a couple of weeks ago, came in on 24%. Good support for that. And I'll put it in the next Retro Adventures poll and we'll see if that wins, because it'd be great to be able to cover that. Behind that came Operation Rapid Strike for Top Secret on 19%, Out in the Black for Serenity on 13%, something which is a sad thing because apparently it's an absolutely great adventure, but we shall eventually find out. It will win one of these polls one of these days. And in final place was The Last War Hulk for Alternity on only 10%. Now, as usual, they're all cleared out of the poll, and we're doing a Retro RPG one. So this week, I put Bangkok for Twilight 2000 in. One of the Far East sourcebooks, or a global sourcebook dealing with the Far East, which is something that Twilight 2000 back in the day didn't tend to cover much. It tended to be very focused on Europe and America. Then we've got the Reformation Coalition Equipment Guide for Traveller of the New Era. Now, Traveller of the New Era is the one I grew up on playing. Although I was aware of Mega Traveller in the older versions, this is the version I played a lot of, and the Reformation Coalition Equipment Guide was a handy book we had, as it fleshed out the military equipment that was available. And a 10-foot pole by Iron Crown Enterprises. Now this is a kind of system-agnostic book about all the equipment you can get in fantasy games. Absolutely fantastic resource for gamemasters no matter what game you play. And Fading Suns D20. Now I've covered Fading Suns before, but in the early 2000s everything came out as a D20 version and Fading Suns was one of them, so it'd be very interesting to cover it. And finally Spycraft by Odrak Entertainment Group. Now this is another D20 game. I decided to throw them in and hopefully one of the full role-playing games based on D20 will get covered, but we shall see how that works out. On other channel-related stuff, well, the Discord's trickling along. There's a little bits of conversation in there. Unfortunately, I've not been able to spend a lot of time as I've had other things going on. Over on rpggamer.org, I'm keeping up with the daily updates of stats out of The Bad Batch. We've now finished the reviews of The Mandalorian, since the last episode of that is out. But it looks like the year's going to be covered in Star Wars new stuff, because I've got to finish off The Bad Batch. We've got The Mandalorian, we've got Visions Season 2 coming out on May the 4th, The Young Jedi Adventures coming out on May the 4th, and then Ahsoka in August. So there's a lot of series with a lot to cover. So it'll be totally new content, stuff which West End Games never even dreamt of. And I'm continuing to publish books based on my notes that I've written for role-playing games over the time on DrivethruRPG. As I mentioned at the start of the video, they're also available to Patreons of Laird or Librarian status. So if you subscribe to that, you can get access to all of them. But otherwise, I'll put links in the description down below where you can buy them on DrivethruRPG. There's a bunch of things, ideas for fleshing out encounters, and I've even published my first full adventure now, which I think looks pretty darn good. I put a lot of work into that and I'm very proud of the way it came out. Apart from that, not much going on, although that sounds like quite a bit to me. So I think I've whittled on for quite long enough. So thank you very, very much for watching as always. But most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.